Welcome to Praxis Journeys, where we explore the paths of today's most influential leaders in education and the real-world strategies they're using to drive lasting change. I'm Vinay Ganti. In each episode, I sit down with the people shaping the future of our schools to talk candidly about the big issues: teacher recruitment, leadership, innovation, school culture, policy, and more. Whether you're an educator, administrator, or advocate, you'll find fresh ideas and actionable insights to inform your own journey and help students thrive. Let's dive in. In this conversation, Dr. Rick Surrency, the elected superintendent of Putnam County School District in Florida, discusses the unique challenges and opportunities of leading a rural school district. He emphasizes the importance of community engagement, innovative teacher retention strategies, and the need for relevant curriculum that prepares students for future careers. Dr. Surrency shares his insights on improving graduation rates and building partnerships with local industries to enhance educational outcomes. So sit back and enjoy the show. Thank you. Dr. Surrency, thank you so much for your time today. Before we dive in, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about yourself and your role at Putnam.
Well, Vinay, thanks for having me today, and it's a pleasure to be here. And my name is Rick Surrency. I'm the superintendent of the Putnam County School District, and we're located in Northeast Florida, about 50 miles south of Jacksonville. Have about 10,000 students, about 1,500 employees. And by the way, I'm an elected superintendent, which is kind of rare in the United States. I have to run for election every 4 years. Most of our superintendents in Florida are elected. So anyway, when I say that, when I'm out of state, I get a lot of questions about that. That's kind of unique.
Yeah. I grew up in Florida, actually, myself. My family and I moved to near Tampa, Florida, so an hour north of Tampa in a town called Spring Hill, Florida, when I was 3 years old. And my sister was born there, actually. We're right near where 50 and 19 hit, so where the mermaids live.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been on that road many times.
Yeah. But I actually went to private school most of my life, so I was not familiar with the fact that most Florida superintendents are elected or not sort of hired, for lack of a better term.
Mostly your small, medium-sized districts, but the big, large urban districts are appointed.
For some of us who are maybe not as intimately familiar with Florida education and things like that, how do you feel like that sort of dynamic affects your role, like of having to be elected versus maybe being appointed or hired?
That's a great question.
By a board?
That's a great question. I think it really changes the dynamics of it. Really keeps me closer to the citizens, because my job depends on getting voted in every 4 years. And so I do a lot of community appearances, a lot of community activities. I have community advisory groups. So I really instead of just worrying about satisfying my school board, I have to really be in touch with the people. And I like the model, and it gives me time over a 4-year period to enact some changes without fear of losing my job. And as an elected superintendent, school boards cannot hire me or fire me.
Right.
So, I have a little more freedom to kind of enact some things that other superintendents may not be able to do.
Well, there's almost a sense of irony in that the fact that you're elected is giving you the ability to think more long-term than maybe a traditional superintendent. Because when you think about elections in like the grander scheme of things, we always think about, politicians who maybe don't have enough time to think long-term because they're just on to trying to get reelected type of thing. But when you look at, for example, the average tenancy of a superintendent across the country right now, it is going down, right? I think it's actually under 4 years. It's like, I think closer to 3 or 3.5 years now.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So if anything, there's something to be said that your model is actually a longevity play, right? So in addition to responsiveness to the
and what it really allows us to do, it allows us to put some systems in place. And I always talk about systems. And a lot of times when you put a system in place, you don't get immediate results. You have to, gradually work through it. But the system itself will bring back a return. And we've been able to do that. I think that's been our secret sauce, is just putting in those systems that over time have been successful.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I think our new leader, James Lane, who came in to lead Praxis, not only Praxis, but our overall K-16 department, as we call it. So from kindergarten through college. He was a former state superintendent. He worked in the Department of Education under Cardona in the previous administration. So he was a state superintendent of Virginia. He was also a district superintendent, teacher. And so he worked in all various perspectives. And he highlighted sort of like one of his biggest challenges that he has always seen was, how do you translate maybe like the individual leadership or the charisma or the personality of a trailblazing superintendent or leader into something that's sustainable upon their departure or maybe upon their succession and things like that. So I appreciate you sort of leading off this conversation with the role of systems and the importance of
Well,
establishing
and
something
I don't
that,
know if you've read the book
yeah,
Good to Great.
yeah, of
So
course,
yeah, Jim Collins, and I've read that book a couple times, and to speak to what you were bringing up, I think as an effective leader, you have to set your organization up in a way where when the leader goes away, those systems continue and sustain those practices even after the leader, you know, decides not to run or is defeated or whatever. So I think I try to adhere to that and create things that are going to last beyond me.
great. So I'd love to like maybe drill down into one of those examples of how you're sort of looking at systems to really help Putnam succeed long term. You've had some pretty impressive stats around teacher retention, building out pipelines and workforce. And I think maybe for the audience too, can you maybe take a step back and give a little more context around the geography or the location that you're in? It's not like you're in like a major metropolitan area. You're kind of in like what would be considered, I think, rural, and for
Yeah,
lack of a better term, right?
yeah.
And so, yeah,
Well,
please, if you don't
Putnam
mind starting
County,
there.
yeah, Putnam County is considered a small rural district, and we have 10,000 students. And probably in another school district outside of Florida, that would be a large district. In Florida, we're considered small, but we are about 30 miles off the coast of the Atlantic coast, inland, and a lot of farm areas, and we're considered a Title One district. I mean,
Mm,
socioeconomically, we're lower than a lot of surrounding districts. So we do have our challenges, but along with that, we have to deal with a lot of inherent issues, absenteeism. Just trying to involve the parents and that type of thing. So there are some challenges that we have to overcome. But we also are in a place where we're starting to grow dramatically. We have a lot of major highways that pass through us. We have a major river, the St. Johns River, that goes through here.
mhm,
And because our surrounding counties are starting to overflow and our property values are less, we're starting to see a major transition of population and industry come into our county. And, we're trying to gear up for that. We're building new schools. We have 5 new schools under construction now through a bond issue and state funding. So a lot of things are happening now, and we're on the right on the edge of exploding. So
yeah.
we're in a good place.
And so when you are looking to sort of, or not you per se, but like your HR department and your principals, what are they all focusing on when it comes to the pitch to a teacher to be like why they should come to one of your schools to sort of start their career or maybe transition their career? How are you sort of building out those pipelines and keeping them engaged?
Yeah, great question. And we're all competing with other counties,
Yeah.
and you can only compete so much pay wise. And we meet the state minimum for pay, but after pay, it takes more to attract a teacher and to keep a teacher here. And one thing I think some of the best recruiting we have is retention, because once we hire a teacher, we don't want them to leave because there is cost involved with hiring and training a new teacher. So you mentioned earlier about our teacher retention numbers. We put in place one system called the Novice Teacher Mentor Program, where we actually have at this time 4 classroom teachers, highly effective teachers who do not teach at all. All they do their entire day is they mentor and they work alongside those
Wow.
0 to 3 year teachers and provide that support. Because when you lose teachers, when they leave the profession, they do it in those first few years.
Yeah.
But if they can be successful, they can feel confident and they have somebody they can call on to give them that help. I tell you what, you can't put a dollar amount on support and make it and feeling them valued. So our retention rates when we started this back in 2018, it was 65% for 0 to 3 year teachers, and now it's like 93%. So we dramatically increased our teacher retention. This past year, we also did something really novel for all of our employees, and that is we've created a a wellness center for all of our employees who have our health insurance where they can actually get free health care. So it's kind of like a walk-in clinic, but only our
Yeah.
employees can use it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a great recruiting tool.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we I think probably the only sector that dominates the news more than education these days is healthcare and the rising cost of it. So I'm sure that is very well appreciated by your
Well, you think about it. I mean, our demographics compared to other industry, we have a lot of young, a lot of females.
yeah,
They have their own unique things. They're
Yeah.
raising children. A lot of
Yeah.
times they're living paycheck to paycheck. So if we can do that, we can really provide an extra incentive for them to come and to stay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you highlighted something that we talk about a lot as well, which is for early career teachers, and that 0 to 3 years is sort of how we think about it too. Is most of the teachers going into the profession, they're aware of the salary when they get in. They know that this isn't a profession where they're going to become wealthy, or at least not right away, and probably potentially ever. And so when you look at the data around why they really leave the buildings in the first couple of years, it's one, it's school leadership. So like they'd lost faith in the principal or the leadership that's supposed to be have their back. But then number two is that they lost faith that they can make a difference in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
They sort of and so being able to mentor early career teachers to give them that confidence and ultimately the confidence that they can make an impact in the classroom. Maybe not day one of when they show up, but like, by their maybe the fall of their second year or the spring of their second, like that's, I think we are in agreement that that's like the secret sort of sauce to get them to say, okay, I can do this now for 5, 10, 15 years. I can be that teacher that I remember maybe when I was growing up that made an impact on me too.
Well, you give them that efficacy where, hey, I can do this now, and
Yeah.
I can control my class. I know how to put together a lesson. And also, another system we have, we bring all of our teachers together like 3 or 4 times a year, like in similar grade bands, similar
Yeah.
subject areas. And we provide training within the district where teachers are sitting together with their peers. And then they go out and they teach those lessons that they develop together. So, really, teaching has become really a team sport. And when I started teaching in the late 70s, hey, once you close your door, you could do whatever you want to, and there weren't really any tests to hold you accountable. But now it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. 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 No. It's it was really we really put a lot of pressure on the individual teachers to reach out, right, back in the day. Now, it is encouraging to see more of these team models. I think we're seeing a lot of great research coming out of like places like ASU and other places around this idea of a team teaching model, right? That sort of
Yeah,
I'm
that
hoping really takes hold.
collective efficacy
Yeah.
that you can do things better with your peers than you can do by yourself.
Yeah, no, it seems as though like this isn't the only reason why, but it seems like a lot of things that you all are putting into place is really sort of translating into student outcomes too. So maybe give people a peek into sort of like some pretty remarkable graduation rate increases, and I'd love to also hear a bit more about how you all have really expanded the curricula in order to really sort of reach out into the community of things that they might be interested in or need, whether it's expanded STEM programs, taking advantage of regional partnerships. I think it seems like with like the rocketry and drone stuff, right? So I think that's something that people I think sometimes miss is that there's always huge opportunity to partnering with local industry or local business to help shape the curriculum of your area, right? So maybe speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, and let me start with the graduation rates because I think
Yeah,
all this is connected. When I came into office in 2016, we had a 54.9% graduation rate. Essentially, one out of every two students who started ninth grade
right.
graduated on time,
Coin flip. Yeah,
and the community was outraged. I mean, it was killing us economically. Businesses would not move here. So again, we put together a systematic model to really look at those early warning signs and looking at the K-12, entirely K-12, looking at third grade, sixth grade, ninth grade, looking at their number of absences, discipline, number of courses they're failing. And we would meet with principals on a regular basis and we'd look at the data. But essentially, if kids were falling through the cracks, we provided those supports for those kids. We had graduation coaches actually at the time who really worked closely with those students and kept track of the data and all that. We've transformed that now where our principals and teachers and everybody in the school are literally graduation coaches themselves. And everybody knows what has to happen for that kid to progress to graduation. But the number one thing, and by the way, we increased from 54.9% in 2016. In 2021, we were at 92.5%, which was the
wow,
largest increase in the state of Florida.
that's
And
amazing.
I'll say that because not only did we put that system in place, but the other things you mentioned too, we've expanded our curriculum, really involved a lot of our career and technical programs, really became involved in our STEM initiative. And what we've done is we've made school relative for these kids. Instead of saying, hey, I'm coming to school and sit in class all day, we gave them a reason to be there. And I think that helped us turn the corner because now these kids could see, hey, when I graduate, there's a job waiting for me. Or
Right.
if I graduate, there's an opportunity for me to go off to college. And we made it real. And we
Yeah.
really used a lot of those former graduates to come back and also pour into our current students. So all that kind of comes together and it has transformed our system where we're offering programs now that a lot of large school districts in Florida are not offering. For example, the aeronautics, the flight program that we have kids actually earning their pilot's license right now.
Hmm. Amazing.
And that's kind of a pretty interesting program. But again, it gives kids a reason to be in school. It gives them kind of a look beyond graduation.
And for those who aren't aware with Florida geography, how far are you guys from Cape Canaveral?
We're about 2 hours north of the Cape.
Okay. Yeah.
And you
So
mentioned going back to the aeronautics, we are one of the first districts that are a charter member of Space Florida, which
okay.
means that we are actually training our kids to work in the space industry. Where, for example, we have welding programs, and our kids can weld, but we can also transition that welding skill to weld the kind of metal used on a satellite or a rocket. And so we are looking to attract businesses to our county, our school district, where they could hire our students to work in the space industry. And by the way, with our river, by the way, the St. Johns River flows north, flows out of the port of Jacksonville. We could actually build stuff here in Putnam County, put it on a barge, ship it out of Jacksonville, and back down to the Cape. So
yeah.
the future is really bright for the space industry here.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of like, one of the things that um I can't remember where I learned this, but when people are like sort of where is gas actually most expensive in this country? It's actually oftentimes in the poorest or lowest socioeconomic communities because those are the communities that are least likely to like price shop. Like they're least likely to go outside of their own immediate geographic area because they've just been conditioned not to, right? Because of a whole variety of environmental factors. Similarly, it's like even though that there might be these amazing industries within a 2-hour drive of your community, like many of these people that are Title I schools, maybe are socioeconomically disadvantaged upbringings, probably don't even realize what is out there. And so bringing that to them and like sort of helping them. And then like, so you're saying, building that career pathway to local jobs or regional jobs, which enable them to stay relatively close by and then become active alumni back into the community upon graduation and continue to invest that way. It could be pretty powerful, I imagine.
One thing you and I talked about is how do we decide what programs to offer?
Yeah.
Especially our career programs, our STEM programs. And, I think any superintendent's going to look at the surrounding industry, not just in our county, but in the region, in the Jacksonville region, in our case, aeronautics, there's a big need for commercial air pilots. Construction is going on, tremendously right now. So a lot of construction jobs. And, we have to pay attention to what the local industry offers because if kids get a certification or training and they can't get a job, then we've wasted their time. So there has to be that connection between school districts and the local industry.
Yeah. So I really appreciate this level of innovation that you all seem committed to doing. And also about relevancy, which you already mentioned before, making sure the curriculum is relevant to like the actual market and industries around. How do you balance that sort of drive for innovation with some of that systems level thing you're talking about? Because like on one hand, is there a tension there between trying new things, but also making sure that all of your schools are sort of being held to the right standards and things like that? How do you manage that?
Well, again, we have to make sure our kids are proficient in the basic standards. I mean,
Right,
that's what we're judged by. They
right.
have to be able to pass the reading, math, science, and all that on the state assessments. But at the same time, we try to make it where when they learn that, they are learning that in the whole realm of, hey, this is how this could help me in a particular job or what, we try to make that connection. And they're not two separate entities. They're actually, we try to bring them together. So again, it goes back to the relevancy that you talked about, and our teachers really try to connect learning with real world life and use a lot of examples. And I think when you just have kids read to read or do math just to do math, but you don't tie it into something, I think you miss that connection there. When there's a connection, research will tell you they're going to retain it when they do something where, okay, I see how that works now. I see when I read about, pilots and that kind of thing creates more interest in what they're reading. So we try to maintain that balance, but it's also important too that, when kids are involved and they're not doing well in those programs, a lot of times we have to put them in some type of remedial class. And especially in high school, that's an issue because when they're in a remedial class, they may not have time in their schedule to do some of these exciting electives that we talk about. So it's really important that they get those basics first before they can actually go
Yeah.
on and do those things that are interesting.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
thing I want to point out too, going back to our STEM, we actually do a K-12 STEM model, and we start exposing students to STEM education in kindergarten. And from kindergarten to 5th grade, they have a STEM elective once every week. When they get to 6th grade, and by the way, our elementary schools are kindergarten through 6. In 6th grade, our kids get a STEM class every single day. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to pique their interest, trying to really make them think about those career pathways. So when they start junior, senior high school, which is how our schools are set up, they can start looking at some of those opportunities maybe in the STEM field as soon as they get into a secondary school. And that whole that progression is real. We're starting to see that really work. Kids are starting to get interested, but we don't wait till they get in high school. We start early in
Right.
elementary school to really kind of build that basis.
Well, and I think what you're sort of probably getting ahead of there too is that by the time anybody who's in kindergarten today, by the time they're graduating high school and potentially entering in the workforce, there isn't going to be a single job out there that doesn't have a big technology or component or some type of component that they're going to need to sort of apply into that role. Like e- even if you want to go become, a plumber or some sort of tradesperson, the tools that you're going to use to like, cut the pipes, all that stuff, or if you're going to work on more commercial projects, whatever it might be, but there technology is going to be embedded if it isn't already in that industry and be basically be used widely, right? And so it's almost like a false distinction now, right? When you talk about STEM, it's really just preparing people for the future in some
You're
ways,
and you hit the nail on the head. We're actually creating kids for jobs that don't even exist yet. And
right?
I've heard some data before that 65% of the jobs we have today, 10 to 15 years from now, will not even exist. So if we don't teach kids how to think and how to do stuff, then they're not going to be successful. So we're trying to really work on that critical thinking and learn those skills that they could use in a number of different positions.
I love that. Yeah, it just reminds me of back when I was in high school, where ironically, my favorite math class that I ever took was a statistic class. I enjoyed I was lucky to get math at a young age, and so I was able to advance to like I did calculus and stuff in high school and things like that. But the reason why I like statistics so much is because you had to like write out and explain what the findings were, and so like it was almost like that was the most rewarding part of it. It was like you did the normal distribution, whatever it is. You found like a probability and whether or not it was significant, all that. But really just then like explaining like what it is that you found. What was the findings that you actually did? And connecting the sort of right brain, left brain around that was like really empowering. I mean, I think it really gave me confidence of like, oh, I can explain the real world. I can explain reality in a way that other people may understand it.
And
And
that's
that
a
was like,
perfect
yeah,
example,
yeah,
that Vinay, that we're trying to get across. Not only do we want you to learn how to work out the problem, but you need to be able to convey that and communicate that in a real world setting. Like,
yeah.
this is what it means. This is how it can impact us. And that's an important skill that I think you hit the nail on the head on that one.
Well, it seems as though you're doing so many incredibly impactful things that are unique, or I wouldn't say unique, but that are specific to the context in which you are leading and you're in the school in which your schools are operating in. If imagine for a second that I'm a brand new green superintendent of a rural district somewhere else in the country. Could be in Florida, maybe not. Where do I start? How do I sort of like what do I focus on first? Because we know that the challenges of the rural district in America are intense today. And because of depopulation and other factors, like they're only going to get worse in many of these places. So if you had to sort of provide counselor coaching or mentorship, where would you start?
Well, that's something I think I've really focused on, and that is not only looking here in our district for resources, because like you say, a lot of times we're limited with our resources. I've had to go outside the district. For example, we partner with a nonprofit out of Jacksonville called STEM 2 Hub, and they basically help provide our training, provide equipment, products that our kids use, because their mission is to ramp up STEM education in the entire area. So again, we partner outside of our district. They provide resources for us that we have no ability to get. With Space Florida, again, we're partnering with them. We partner with a lot of local businesses and corporations outside of our district. So my number one thing is you cannot operate effectively in a vacuum if you don't extend yourself and reach out for those valuable partners. It's hard to get it done in a small, economically challenged district. And I travel across the United States. I do a lot of public speaking, but more than that, I actually make connections with different superintendents, different vendors, and that has been so valuable for our district because we really are a microcosm of what's going on outside of our district because we are reaching out and bringing that value back into our district. So my advice to a new superintendent is look outside your walls. The answer is outside there. And it's really been a great journey for me. And, I can't thank the people enough that have helped support us. Matter of fact, some of the first people that approached me after I got elected was our largest private employer, which is a paper mill, Georgia Pacific.
Uh-huh.
And I'll never forget the day he came up to me, one of their representatives, he said, we need the school system to help us because we are losing our workers to retirement and we cannot find qualified workers for that. So right after that, we started our first academy, and it was an advanced manufacturing academy, essentially to train our students for those jobs right here locally. I mean, that's a great example of where we're connecting with a major industry, and right now we're up and going. So
Yeah.
we have to reach outside of our walls, find that resource that can help us and join with us to achieve our goals.
Well, I'll end on that note and just with a thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it, Rick. This was a super, I think, encouraging conversation. That
Vinay, thanks for having me,
yeah,
and I appreciate the opportunity to share. And if you share my information, my contact information, anybody wants to reach out, I'd be glad to, you know, cooperate with them any way I can.
we can do that. Thank you again. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Well, thanks for listening to Praxis Journeys. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know someone who'd find this conversation helpful, feel free to share it with them. I'm Vinay Ganti, and until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep working toward the kind of change our students deserve.